when he looks at me, the way he looks at me, he does not know what I lack or how I am incomplete. He sees me for what I am, as I am. Here's your look at the NECA toys. This is the shape of water, and this is the Amphibian Man. From master storyteller Guillermo del Toro comes The Shape of Water, a fairy tale for troubled times set against the backdrop of a Cold War-era America. In 1962 Baltimore, Alyssa is a mute, isolated woman who works as a cleaning lady in a high-security government facility. When she and her co-worker Zelda discover a secret experiment in a hidden lab, Alyssa's life changes forever. But the first thing that we do is figure out how tall the Amphibian Man is. Taking the tape measure, putting it right to the very top of his head. There we go. According to the readout here, if I'm reading this right, it's reading right, man. According to the readout, though, he's 7.5, actually 7.6 inches exactly. Switching that quickly over to centimeters, you're looking at the figure standing 19.3, almost 19.5 centimeters in height. For the figure's accessories, I really have to admit that NECA toys have really come through. I would have been perfectly content getting an Amphibian Man that maybe had interchangeable hands, check that, an interchangeable head, did that, and the plate of eggs. But they did give us one better. They did give us all the stuff that I had mentioned, but you probably are noticing to the right side of your screen that they did also include this. They gave you the shackled base in which the Amphibian Man spends a good part of his time chained in, as they did actually include real chains. They gave you one with a collar that will go over top of its head. Well, you have to take the head off. And also gave you shackles to attach to the sides of the arms. Well, you'll have to take the hands off. Before we do all that, though, I just want to show you guys a close-up look at the details of the base itself. A nice touch that I like is that they wet the top here simply probably by just adding a clear coat, but it's not even just clear coating it. You'll see that there's some discoloration to it as well. It looks like it's dirtied water, or water that has wet the base and then the base has dried, and like I said, all of the sediment and stuff like that would have been left behind. Really nicely done, NECA toys. To include this, I really would not have been expecting this, but I must say, having it now physically in hand, I'm really thankful for the fact that they would go above and beyond simply just giving us a straight out figure. Goes to show the amount of time and detail that they put into kind of really considering all the things that would be crucial for displaying a character like the Amphibian Man. Let's have a look at some of the other accessories that come included with the figure. Actually, you know what, before we do that, I might just want to go to my mental board and just kind of erase a few talking points for a second and replace it with, perhaps let's have a look at the figure first, because again, like all of these accessories will come into play as we kind of get through looking the figure over. Sounds good? Alright, sounds good. Having a look at the figure itself, some exquisite details have been added to this. Guillermo del Toro, first and foremost, is kind of the king when it comes to creature effects. Some of the designs that they've incorporated into his film, and maybe not solely all the brainchild of, what's in his noodle, he has really come up with some really neat designs. Obviously, looking at the Amphibian Man, the first thing I'm looking at and thinking of is Abe Sapien from the Hellboy franchise. Of course, that was also a Guillermo del Toro production. I'm sure anyone with a customizing knack for it could probably go in here and customize this to an Abe Sapien. But I mean, such the exquisite details, I wouldn't even want to ruin such a great looking sculpt. The face itself, let's get a good gander at the face. Really nicely done here. One thing I like though, and you almost even miss it if you don't look at it closely enough, is that you can see there's actual speckled dots that they've painted on the lenses of the eyes. Not only that, but the actual eyeball is separated by that circular ring on the inside. It just goes to show, like, if you look at it really closely, there's details to be had there, when perhaps you didn't even think that there were details there to start off with. The figure as a whole looks like it's been cast in or made in a translucent plastic. That'll come into play in a talking point that I didn't erase off the board. We'll talk about that in a second. Over top and overlaid over top of this, the plastic itself, this clear plastic that they used, they've painted layer upon layer, greens, blues, and beiges, all kind of marrying together quite nicely. Even like the torso section has some exquisite detailing. The head portrait, though, is by far one of my favorites, perhaps. I haven't really looked at all of them. There's a few that I've left off. I will be rectifying that in future reviews, of course, so if you're looking forward to the fawn review, that will be coming shortly. I just never got around to reviewing it. But this could be one of my favorite figures, just because of the fact that there's so much detail to capture here. Like, even the fins on the sides, the flaps of flesh or skin that would have been over top of the head here, the little speckling treatment of the purples mixed with the blues. Really, there's a lot to gander here. Going back to a talking point that I mentioned about the base itself, it looks like there's a bit of a sheen, a shine, a coat of clear, perhaps, that they've added to the body. You can see that it reflects the light rather nicely. On the back, you've got multiple fins, one large fin running down the spine, and this is made up of soft plastic. I'm glad that it's made use of soft plastic here, not hard, rigid plastic, so I don't have to worry about this bending and breaking. And it does almost have like a natural flow and feel to it. He has fins running down the sides of his arms, one located on the back of his triceps section here, and he's got multiple fins running down the sides of his legs, the backs of his legs to be exact. Some fins located on the back there as well as located on the sides of the legs. Again, there's really a lot to admire here. And just think to yourself that this was all done using, well, this plastic right here. That's probably the closest plastic I can compare it to. And just the amount of paint and detail that they put over top of that is quite the sight. Now, he does have some interchangeable options to him. We can have a look at those right now, one of which being the interchangeable head. Not enough anguish, perhaps, in your amphibian man? Well, he does also come with this head portrait, which doesn't change too much when you look at the top section. And yet I feel more anguish on this head than I do this one right here until I look at the mouth. The mouth does have an open and closed jaw, so you can open and close that. Especially when you are shackling up the amphibian man, you can probably most definitely make use of this head portrait right here. Changing out the head, you want to be careful and mindful of those fins located on the side. But I guess working in their favor, the fact that they are using a softer plastic does mean that these aren't going to break off on you. I'm surprised actually that they did use a more larger ball joint than the conventional cylinder ball joints. I wonder what dictates why some characters, for example, use the larger ball joint, and while the other ones use more the cylinder ball joint. Anyways, we'll pop that back into place. It will involve just a little bit of extra pressure. There we go. And you've got this head portrait right here. It's good. I still kind of like this one a little bit more. I like just the idea of seeing the lips rather than the visible teeth. But again, just to give you an idea of the comparison between them side by side. One other strange comparison is these arms. Before we maybe talk about those arms, we'll talk about these little slots. Which slots would those be? It would be this slot here, and it would be this slot right here. To the naked eye, you almost even missed it until the point I pointed that out to you. He does also come with these fins. These fins slot themselves into those grooves. The hardest part actually is remembering which slot goes where, because I specifically wanted to lay them out here on the review space here so that I knew exactly which way that they went. The one remembering point that I'm using to kind of remind myself is that the little slit here, see the bend, the fold in the middle, it actually angles its way into the torso. It was the only way I could remember which way these went. And the thing is, because they can go in a couple of different configurations, you'll find yourself probably wanting to go in, put them in, and then realizing later, oh, I put them in the wrong way. Now, the additional fins is a nice inclusion. See, right now I'm trying to remember which way these ones went in. There we go. Just angle it in and sliding in place. Unfortunately, though, when you are putting the fins in, these arms have to be up a certain angle. You might even find it easier to bring the arms up further than what they really should be. Pop the fins in, and then lower the arms down like that. It does give you some extra that you can incorporate to your amphibian man. It does unfortunately mean that when you are moving the arms up, it's going to look disjointed, like it doesn't belong there. So unfortunately, when it comes to displaying the figure, you're almost going to always have to have his arms down at a 45-degree angle to kind of give you the most accurate look, if you will. We'll go ahead and take these take these off of the figure. It's kind of remind me of the fins, the web underarms from Spider-Man. The other thing that the figure comes with is something that I first was perplexed by. I couldn't understand why they would give us the exact same arm. Yeah, it does give you a different hand, but the hand could easily just be popped out the socket and switched out with the one that came with this hand, or this arm here. But then I realized, looking at the two, they aren't the same. The fins, the scales here, will actually go further to the actual wrist. If you can see it right there. They aren't the exact same. They're close, don't get me wrong, they are close, but they're not exact carbon copies. Even you can see on this side here how this scale, this fin, goes further down and almost to the point of the wrist, whereas this one right here doesn't go all the way. I wish there was a simpler way of changing out the arms. The arms aren't difficult to pop out, but one result that I've noticed from it, if you take the hand out, take the arm out here, just wiggle it out from the socket, replace it to the one that you want to use, which is this one here. And this is not what I was going to talk about, one result from it. But you can see there's the new arm, and there was the original arm that we started with. The problem with it is the way it's pegged into the forearm. This entire peg you're going to pull off. Unfortunately, though, mine has developed a bit of a loose problem. I haven't taken the arm off that frequently, but just the few times that I have taken the arm off, I've noticed that the ball peg, the peg here, has come loose and freed itself now to a point where it sits a little looser than I really would want. Now, I'm trying to think of how else they could have actually done this. They could have had it where the arms could have just detached off from this peg, but then you're still going to have the problem that this is going to get loose on you. So again, you may decide along the ways just to choose which arm you want to go with and just leave it at that. And then from there, you can again swap the hands out to whatever hand that you want to go with. The one hand, on the one hand, this is the hand with the more open webbing that we saw initially. And this is what the new hand looks like. Slightly more closed in, almost a directional finger pointing hand than this one right here, which is more of a relaxed hand. And that's the difference between the two hands. If you wanted to as well, you could quite easily just wiggle this hand off like that and just replace it with whatever hand that you want to use with. So again, I like the fact that they include an extra arm. I mean, it's the very subtlest of changes from one to the other. It's not really enough to justify always changing the arms out, but I like the fact at the very least that NECA would give you an extra option to go with. The very last thing, we'll close up his mouth for the time being. The last thing that the figure comes included with is the plate of the eggs. 5 eggs in total. The eggs are all glued in place, so they're not going anywhere. And it kind of has the same problem that some of the other Guillermo del Toro pieces come with. Really neat accessories, but they don't give you any tabletops, furniture, or any place else where you can actually display this. I would love to get myself a smaller scaled table, something that would accommodate a 7-inch figure like this. Something that I could actually put the plate of eggs onto if I wanted to have the figure sitting. Now the figure could technically sit, but the problem is as well, we don't have a chair. So it might involve some further thinking on my part. I like the fact again that we do get things like eggs, but the biggest problem, there's no real place to put it. Okay, so let's have a look at this. I didn't forget about the base. So what you can do is you can take the head off, like so. And while you're also at it, why not just take those hands off too. Just wiggle them off and wiggle them off. And actually, you know what? Just before we do that, why don't we just resume where we left off. We'll put back the head. Somebody's right now like, where are you going with this? I'm just going to put the hands back and everything because I realize I'm probably going to wrap up this review with him shackled. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I'm sure now he has something to look forward to. Not so much. But I'm just going to put those back into place because I just want to quickly show you guys the articulation before we put the Amphibian Man back onto his base. So for the articulation, the head rotates all the way around. Again, the fact that the fins here on the sides are made of soft plastic doesn't hinder or limit the head rotating it around. If anything, they may become a bit of a nuisance that they're just getting caught up in the turn. But at the very least, you can still rotate the head all the way around. Head hinges up, head hinges down, and depending on which head you want to go with, this mouth actually does have an open and close option. Whereas the other one, this one right here, does not. His upper torso does have a ball joint. There is no articulation for basically this point down because, well, you wouldn't want to break up such great looking sculpting here. So basically you're just getting the added bonus of having the upper torso ball joint and then therefore limiting all the stuff lower from basically like the torso down. The legs split out at, I guess I'd say like a 45-degree angle, give or take. The legs move forward, the legs move back. They have a swivel on the top cut of the thigh, so basically where it attaches to the ball joint. He has a double hinge in the knee. Sort of a giveaway, unfortunately. Now you've got a visible joint, but you're probably not going to see this anyways, depending again how you depict the figure. If you want to have him on his knees in anguish as he's shackled up, most definitely you would probably see that joint. Any other time you probably won't see it though. Feet hinge up and down. There is an ankle rocking pivot. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any toe articulation. He does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. I did notice that the base doesn't have any peg points, but I mean really you're either going to have the figure standing on top of it or you're going to have it probably on its knees. Anyways, so let's go ahead and dismantle where we started our process. We're going to take that off. We're going to take the hands off like that, and we're going to take the other hand off. I know I'm doing a lot of disassembly right now. We're going to bring the base over. We're going to attach the collar, and the collar will just sort of fit its way over top of the flaps of these fins. These don't seem to open. I wouldn't try to force these open. It doesn't look like the pin comes loose from itself. So you can just kind of fit it over top of the head like that. And it fits rather snugly, you don't have to worry about that. And let's go ahead and pop. I'm going to go ahead with the original head because I just kind of like the lips on this one. And then for the hands, you're going to just bring the hands in. You're immediately limiting yourself what you can do with the figure because while the head chain, the chain for the collar is certainly a lot longer, you'll see the chains for the hands are much, much shorter. So you're only going to have so much clearance that you're going to be able to manipulate what you're going to be doing pose-wise with this figure. Like again, his hands, his arms are going to be naturally pulled down simply just because there isn't going to be enough space and clearance to get that. And then we'll get the other hand in place, just like so. This one wrist right here I find is a little bit smaller. It seems like it's the same size, but I feel like it's just a little bit smaller. And I think I know exactly what I did wrong. I didn't take this other arm off. Let's just pop this off. Let's pop this off. There we go. Quickly realizing the other fault that I made here, we're going to take off the collar. One of the other problems as well is if you are swapping out the arms, you have to remember the fact that those arms now have to go back, because if they don't, the shackles, there we go, here we go, the shackles won't clear the forearm. It has to have this thinner section right there, as you can see on the forearms. So going back to a point I was going to mention about just deciding on one of these arms and sticking to it, if you decide that you want to have the Amphibian Man actually attach the shackles at any given point, you're going to want to make sure that you default the hands, the forearms, back to this state that have the lower sitting fins rather than these ones right here. And then you can actually get the figure attached in place and properly hooked up, shackled up to his display stand. Once you get everything shackled up, this is what you end up getting. And again, the problem is you're going to have to remember to swap those arms out if you want the shackles to properly fit around his wrists. And you can see on both sides, I've actually decided to have him on his knees for the time being, but you could have the figure standing upright. But just remember, you're only going to get so much clearance on the sides of these chains. And I've also got the anguished head in place there as well. A good, strong contender for how you want to display the Amphibian Man. Again, the biggest thing would be just to make sure that he is getting a proper stable footing. In this case, not so much stable footing as you would be stable legging, I guess, for how you want to display the figure. I really love this. I love the fact that NECA Toys would actually give us a really cool functional base in the sense that you could actually imprison the Amphibian Man on top of it. I guess you could probably make even use of this stand for other figures as well. Perhaps if you even have like a Frankenstein's monster, that would be kind of cool also. But again, really neat the fact that NECA thinks outside the box. I would be fine to just simply get an Amphibian Man on his own with, like I said, the interchangeable head and the interchangeable arms as an option. But this definitely makes a strong contender here for how you can display the figure on your shelf. Now, I was a big fan of The Shape of Water, a different take and telling, if you will, of the classic Beauty and the Beast story, told in a much darker way, something you would expect from the mind of Guillermo del Toro. From the credit of NECA Toys, I must admit, I'm pleasantly happy, surprised, if you will, the fact that we are getting so many characters from the world of Guillermo's films. But as they've announced, and certainly as they continue to show, they're doing a whole line of Guillermo del Toro and his signature collection. And of course you had to add the Amphibian Man to that as well. Shape of Water as well as Pan's Labyrinth are really some of the notable films that Guillermo has produced as of late. If you've never watched any of his films, you're definitely going to be in for a treat. But just know though, whatever you're going to be getting into, whatever the film you decide to choose as your first outing, expect that it will be slightly darker and not quite the fairy tale that you maybe have been used to growing up. As for the Amphibian Man, he's got some spectacular details to him. I love the fact that we essentially get ourselves a clear see-through figure, and then all the paint and the details are added over top of that. The icing on the cake is the fact that we also get ourselves this shackled base. Something I really was not expecting when we first found out that we were going to be getting the Amphibian Man. I really was not ever thinking that we were going to be getting ourselves the shackled base, so all the more treat when I opened this up to find out the shackled base was also included inside as well. If you are a big fan of The Shape of Water, I know I am, you definitely want to be picking up the Amphibian Man and adding it to your collection. If you did manage to pick up this figure for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of it, or really just based on this review, or this review alone, let me know what you guys think down below of the new NECA Toys, the Guillermo del Toro, The Shape of Water, Amphibian Man. Make sure as well you hit that subscribe button down below, colleagues of the mob, and turn on that bell notification so that when future videos for more future NECA reviews will be coming soon to this channel, you won't be the person that's missing out. Just FYI, between you and me, don't tell anybody else. Shh, don't tell. Just between you and me, there's going to be more NECA reviews coming your way. So keep your peepers peeled and stay tuned to this channel because, like I said, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff coming your way. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.